Are you interested in intermittent fasting for weight loss but don't know where to start? Or maybe you've tried fasting before and now you're ready to get back into it, but at that beginner level? If so, then this is the episode for you. I'm going to be giving lots of tips and actions that you can take right away to transition into your intermittent fasting journey, but in a way that is going to be more approachable, to build your confidence, and to make sure you are comfortable in that transition process. So, before I get into it, a couple of disclaimers. I'm not a physician or medical provider, so if you need to get clearance or authorization from your medical provider to do fasting or any type of weight loss plan, then please do so. Additionally, trigger warning, I'm going to be talking about fasting and weight loss, and so if you have a history of eating disorders, this may not be the episode for you. But here is the good thing. I am going to be offering a lot of value through the information I'm going to be sharing. And this is going to be a podcast type of episode, so you can listen on the go, whether you are doing things around your house, whether you are in the car, you can listen to get all of this good information I'm going to be sharing. Now, at the end, what I will do is to give you some action tasks. I want to make sure that you walk away with actions that you can begin to take immediately to get you on that track to fasting for weight loss. So you might want to come back and just make a few notes about the action task and what your plan is to begin that implementation process. And so you would just need to listen to the last few minutes of the video, and I will also put those action tasks in the notes. So with that all said, let's go ahead and get into it. So I always like to anchor these conversations, whether no matter what level of fasting we're talking about, just to talk about what is fasting, because we don't want to overcomplicate this. So at its most simple level, fasting is there's a period of time that you're choosing not to eat, that you're abstaining from food, and that is going to be your fasting window. You're going to have a block of time where you're fasting, you're not eating, you're not taking in calories. And then you're going to have a block of time where you will be eating. That is going to be your eating window. That's going to be the time that you will be taking in calories. This is something that we naturally do, but with intermittent fasting, what we do is we will narrow that eating window. And what you also want to do, and why the information I'm going to be sharing with you, is about two protocols that I suggest at the beginner level, because at the beginner level, you want to not only build your confidence, I'll talk a little bit more about that, but you want to build your fasting muscle. This is just like if you were going to the gym. You don't want to start out lifting the heaviest weight. You want to build up and do longer fasts if that is what you're interested in. So, in order to do that, you're going to start off with shorter fasts, but still can be really effective. So, now that we know what intermittent fasting is, intermittent people come to intermittent fasting for weight loss, they come to it for overall health. And one of the ways or reasons why it is effective is because it helps to manage blood sugar. It helps to manage that insulin response because you are abstaining from food for a period of time. So you're not elevating your blood sugar. And when you are not having food, when you're not having meals, you're not triggering that insulin response when you're not, again, having meals. So that is, again, a very simple way of putting it in terms of why people come to intermittent fasting and why it is effective. So let's talk a little bit more about your eating window, what you eat during your eating, what to eat during the eating window, and then your fasting window. Now, intermittent fasting is not a diet, so I'm really not going to tell you what to eat. I'm going to make a couple of suggestions to really help support your weight loss, but it's not telling you what to eat. It's really telling you when to eat. So just make sure during your eating window, that's when you're going to have your calories. That's when you're going to have your meals. And then during your fasting window, you want to have water, coffee, tea. I want you to abstain from calories. You only want to have water, coffee, tea. Again, water, coffee, tea during your fasting window. And I would suggest that you do not use cream, sweeteners, anything in your coffee or your tea. You don't want to have calories. Something else, when you start to do longer fasts, you should not need it for these shorter fasts. I'm going to be suggesting, which is a 12-hour fast, 12-hour eating window, 12-12. That's for somebody who's really just starting. And then for most people, I'm going to suggest you do a 16-hour fast, 8-hour eating window. I will get a little bit more into it. But because these are shorter fasts, you should not need electrolytes. You really only incorporate those, we should need those for longer fasts, but I'm mentioning them just in case you hear about it or you decide from your research that's something that you want to incorporate. So there we go. So covered eating window, fasting window, and now what I want to talk a little bit about is I want to hit on again. It's not telling you what to eat, but here's going to be my suggestion. You may hear a lot of people who do fasting, they do low carb or keto, and that's because those plans really go hand in hand in supporting your fasting. When you're doing lower carb, it makes it easier to fast because again, lower carb is just a way of managing your blood sugar as well. So it just makes it easier to fast, but you don't have to eat that way. I would suggest eating whole foods as much as possible as you are entering this journey, and maybe phase in approach to and continually improve your nutrition. But eat whole foods as much as possible and cook your own food as much as possible. Even if it is food, we want to lean into the lean protein. We want to lean into the vegetables. But even if it is food that is deemed not as healthy, like a burger and a fry, try to make it yourself. And I think that goes a long way. Making your own food will go a long way, even on this beginner level intermittent fasting journey. So now let's get into the core plans. Like I said, we want to, if you are somebody who's really hesitant to try this, you don't know, you really need to build your confidence, you are having lots of doubts about it, what I'm going to suggest you start with is at a 12-hour eating window, 12-hour fast, because that is, again, going to help you build your fasting muscle. It's going to help you build your confidence, and you are going to have that time to work on mindset while you're doing this. And a 12-hour eating window, 12-hour fast really mimics the natural way that many of us are already eating and fasting, but you're just going to be more intentional at this point. So you always want to choose a fasting window that is going to be in alignment with your life, your lifestyle. So for you might want to choose a eating window of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. You could do 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., but choose an eating window that is in alignment with what is going to better fit your life. Now, during that eating window, eat 3 meals a day. And this is where you can really be intentional, because then you're going to be eating within, and I'm going to use 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. as an example. You're going to be eating 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., but you're limited to those 3 meals a day. 3 meals a day. 3 meals a day. And you might eat around 8 a.m. when your fast eating window starts. Then maybe you may eat again around 1. And then you may eat again around 6 or 7. But those are going to be your times. You want to limit that snacking, and that's where a lot of intentionality is going to come in this fasting window. You don't want to be all day triggering that blood sugar when the intention is around doing intermittent fasting is really helping to manage your blood sugar. So 3 meals a day, not telling you what to eat, but suggesting that you at least at minimum cook your own food as much as possible. As much as possible. I want to be realistic here. So that is the 12 hours of eating, 12 hours of fasting. Now, here's where I suggest most people start is doing a 16-8. So if you're doing 12-12 and you're starting off there, once you have mastered that, I would say if you can, if you do it for a week, 2 weeks, and then you feel comfortable, now you want to go to your 16-8, and this is where I suggest most people start at the beginner level, is doing 16 hours of fasting and 8 hours of an eating window. 16 hours of fasting, an 8-hour eating window. Many people will experience success at this level. Now, I'm a woman of a certain age, and I'm just going to be real honest with you. When I started fasting, and then I hit like my late 30s, and then especially got into my 40s, the 16-8 wasn't the best protocol for me. At a period of time, it worked fine, and I'm being transparent with you because I want you to start here, and if it works for you, stay at, you can stay at the 16-8. But if you find like, hey, this is good, this is helping me to transition, but this is not as effective, then you might want to think about going to another fasting protocol. But also, the food that you eat will have a lot to do with your level of success as well, especially when you have the flexibility of a longer eating window, like with a 12-hour eating window or even an 8-hour eating window. So in your 8-hour eating window, pick a time that is in alignment with your lifestyle. So if you work a 9 to 5, you might want to eat your meals at work and say, I want to, my eating window will be from 9 to 5. If you want your eating window to go into the time that you would be at home with your family, you want to go out with friends, you might want to pick an eating window of 12 to 8, 12 noon to 8. So what I would suggest is eating 2 meals during your eating window. 2 meals, and then if you need it, a snack, and it could be a heavy snack, something like with some protein, and like what I would do is like some tuna, make it like some tuna with light mayo, cut up some cucumbers, something that's going to give you kind of stick and be a little filling and get you, especially when you first starting, get you over that in between phase from lunch to dinner, if you're going to do, for example, 12 noon to 8 p.m., which is a popular window of eating. So just make sure when you select your eating window, that is when you're having your calories. That is when you're having your food. So if you select 11 to 7, that's when you're going to be eating. You start at 11, you cut off at 7. You start at 8 if you're doing 9 to 5, you start at 9, you cut off at 5. If you're doing 12 noon to 8, you start at 12 noon, you cut off at 8. You get what I'm saying? The importance here is that you have the time that you open your eating window, you have the time that you close your eating window, but also what you do in the in between in that window matters, and that is why I'm saying you're going to have those 2 meals and maybe 1 snack. 2 meals and 1 snack if you need it. And when I started, I'm again transparency here. I did eat 3 times. So I would eat a really small, which what I would call kind of a snack. I would have a smoothie for breakfast, and then I would have a lunch, which would be like a large salad, and then for dinner I would have a vegetable stir fry. So that is an example of what I did when I first started intermittent fasting, and I started with the 16-8 approach. So now I hope that you have a good handle on both of the protocols, and you can decide where to start. And so here are your action tasks so that you can start right away with taking on one of these fasting protocols. So here's what I wanted you to do. I want you to select the fasting protocol that you're going to use and be very honest with yourself. Actually, I'm going to a couple things I want to highlight. What I want you to do during this time period is to make assessments on how comfortable you feel. Do you want to transition to another? Identify if you feel comfortable, or do you want to transition to another fasting protocol. And if you do, then you can look at the intermediate levels of fasting, and I have an episode on that as well. But what I also want you to do is start being mindful of When are you hungry? When are you full? That is going to be helpful, and that's why you're only having your 2 meals or 3 meals. So, paying attention to your hunger cues because you're not snacking. Pay attention to the triggers and the things that are maybe making you want to snack. Are you wanting to snack out of boredom? Are you wanting to snack and it's emotional eating? So this is a good time as you are transitioning into these fasting protocols to really start to identify, what that relationship with food is like, and that can be helpful as well. A couple of strategies that you may want to use to get through your fasting period. Some people drink black coffee. It helps to suppress your can help to suppress your appetite. I drink yerba mate tea. I will put a link in the put a link below. That is something I do, is have a jar of yerba mate tea to get through my fasting window. You can drink water. That is not my preferred method. So there are little strategies that you can use to get through your fasting time period. So now let's move on to action task. We are ready. Action task for this episode. What I want you to identify is what fasting protocol you're going to do. If you really need to build your confidence, if you've had some trouble sticking to plans, I'm going to suggest that you go with that 12-12. If you are something you're feeling like nothing is working, I've tried thing after thing and I can't stick to anything, I want you to now build a track record of success where you know that you can stick to something, and at least for a week or two, do the 12-hour fast, 12-hour eating window. Now, if you feel pretty, okay, and where I'm going to suggest that most people start is with the 16-hour fast, 8-hour eating window. That is where I want most people to start at. That is where you will likely experience a bit more success. But again, you still can have success on the 12-12 as well. Just depends on what you're eating. So number one, action, select your fasting protocol. Your 12-12 or you're going to be 16-8. Then I want you to specify the window of time you're going to be eating, the window of time you're going to be fasting. So I'll give you an example. If I were going through this exercise, the fasting protocol that I will pick is going to be 16-8. The time period for my eating window would be from 12 noon to 8 p.m. And then the time period for my fasting window would be 8 p.m. then to 8 p.m. to 12 noon, right? That's going to be my fast. Yes. So I will specify your eating window, specify your fasting window. You don't want to be playing, we don't want to play this fast and loose. We don't want to be all willy-nilly with this. We want to put some parameters around it because this is what's going to help us. These guardrails are going to help us to be successful. And then the next thing I want you to do is then be real specific, like I said, around that eating window. Start to approximate the times you would eat. It doesn't have to be spot on, but just approximate the times you're going to eat because that's going to help you, again, as you are becoming more aware of your hunger cues or when you're full. That will help you to say, okay, now's around the time I should eat. If you feel like, oh, I'm not hungry, go ahead. You don't have to eat during that time. But what I don't want you to do is try to push a fast so long, then you binge. That is what I want you to avoid. So if you have the approximate times to check in with yourself, then you can kind of assess, am I okay or can I wait a little longer? Just don't wait too long because you don't want to go so far that you're going to binge. So now, again, if I'm doing this exercise, I eat around noon. I would probably have a snack around 3 if I needed it. If I didn't, I will be fine. And then I would probably have my last meal around between 6, no later than 7. So that's, again, having those approximate times that I would eat. And then lastly, again, this is not what to eat. I want this to this is the approachable beginner phase for you. So not telling you what to eat, but to position you better for success. I would say as much as you can, cook your own meals, eat whole foods, A simple way to think about Whole Foods is shop the perimeter of the grocery store. You're going to go through the produce section, get items from there. You're going to go through the meat section, you're going to get items from there. And you're going to avoid in between those aisles because they usually don't have a whole lot of good stuff for us, you guys. So that is it. I hope that this has offered a lot of value for me, for you. And I want to tell you just a little bit about me, because if you have been here this long, I'm hoping you're subscribing. Please subscribe, click like. I want you to go in the comments to tell me what fasting protocol you're going to start out with. And as far as me, I am Nikki. My name is Nikki Harper. I am a wellness coach, and so I work with women to support them. I specifically work with women who are overwhelmed and overweight to help them to begin to prioritize themselves and to begin on that weight loss journey. And so I know how important it is when you are overwhelmed to have an approachable system to weight loss, and something that won't feel like it's just another responsibility or something to check off on that task list. So please, again, subscribe. I will put a link below for a free guide. Then also I do have times you can schedule. If you are really serious and you want a step-by-step program, you want accountability, you don't want to have to think about it, you want it to be mindless, and you want somebody there that is going to be holding your hand through the process, and you want a coach, if that is you, I have a link that I'll place also below where you can schedule some time to speak and have a conversation about how I may be able to support you, what things have worked well for you, and what things may help you get on a path to success. And so with that, you guys, I'm going to leave you with this. It's not about being nice. It's about being kind, and you got to be kind to yourself before you're kind to anyone else.